Okay, I think everybody got the notice. We are now officially live. So I'm just waiting here, and you'll get a little feedback temporarily till I can mute it. All right, now we are live on YouTube. So thanks everybody for attending tonight, and for anyone who's watching. And welcome to the June 2021 meeting of the Grand Strand Astronomers, the Astronomy Society in Myrtle Beach. Before we introduce our speaker, I'll just say a couple of things in way of kind of updates for everybody. So we still continue doing Zoom meetings. Our plan is to start with face-to-face meetings in the fall and probably the August timeframe. So right now we're planning on resuming that at Coastal Carolina University. If assuming conditions don't change. But as we've said before, even though we will have face-to-face meetings, we will still have the ability to come in via Zoom. There's actually some very good facilities there. We'll actually get one of the rooms that has a number of big screens, so we can actually have pretty good interaction. So we're looking forward to that. We also just announced to everybody that we are now officially members of the Astronomical League, which is a organization of amateur astronomy groups all over the U.S. They have a lot of really good programs, like observing programs and resources, as well as there's a magazine everybody will be getting called The Reflector. So if anybody got a notice from John or Gerald about asking for some more data, like whether you want a digital copy of the magazine or a paper copy, that's why that we asked that. So and there are a couple other questions there. That's what that was all about. So we're also working on the website. We have a proto website up. It's not, if anybody's looked at it, it's not complete yet. I still need to tweak the design a little bit. That's going to shape up over the next month. So appreciate everybody's patience on that. So so that's the general update for what's going on here. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, who's Doug Lively. He's the one in the red. And Doug Lively is, he's a longtime amateur astronomer. I know he was in the high-tech industry for a long time. He was a longtime amateur astronomer. Probably one of the people that took as long on the Herschel 400 as I did, and which, for those who don't know what that is, that's a observing program from the Astronomical League, where you observe 400 of the best Herschel objects, many of which are a little tricky to find, but it takes quite a bit of time to do that. Doug's also a solar system ambassador, the NASA JPL volunteer educator program. So he does a tremendous amount of outreach. He has been for many years off and on one of the executive officers of the Raleigh Astronomy Club. So Doug, I would rather than talk about what you're going to be talking about, I'm going to let you talk.
Oh, thanks, Ian, and it's great. First of all, it's great seeing you. And Ian and I have had a long and great relationship over the last I don't know how long, 20 years, is it, Ian? Something like that. It's we've known each other for a very, very long time, and like Ian said, it's some of these don't do what we did because some of the observing programs took too long, and it's really mainly because of work and stuff like that. But and we'll talk a little bit about that. So it's really apropos that you guys just joined Alcor. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and we'll talk a little bit about improving observations. And so let's see if I can pop that over there. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I will just kind of update you guys a little bit on some of the things. I am retired now, but yeah, I was way in high tech for a lot of years. I did a lot of medical device development, a lot of object-oriented development for election systems and stuff like that. I have a pretty varied career, but I went ahead and retired last year, and it's been great. Although, as I was saying a little earlier, it hasn't really improved us on my observing, mainly because of weather and then some other little projects that I'm doing here at the house. I will let you know now that you guys have joined the the Astronomical League, you can get nationally recognized observing awards through the league for your observations. And so we'll talk about how to actually make observations through the astronomical league. This will actually make you a better astronomer. When I was first approached about doing, you know, observations, I was a little skeptical at first. I just wanted to kind of freewheel it, but I will tell you that they really improved me as an astronomer, made me better. And then kind of the conversations that we had with one another also did that. But anyway, on the right here in the right panel, these are some of the things that I've actually some awards that I've gotten from the Astronomical League, and these are really a lot of these are really pretty easy. You can do these in a month or a couple of months. And then others of them that get more advanced take a long time, like the Herschel 400 and double stars, especially, I think took quite a bit of time. But you don't have to do them one after the other. You can also do them in parallel. And so while I was waiting for certain objects to arise, I was able to get other awards. So, and that's really what we're to talk about tonight is really, improving your observational skills, how to hone them. And the AL is a really good place to start with that. And so we'll talk about picking an observing program. Where do you start? What's your interest level? How to plan your observations, making observations, and then submitting results to the league so you can get credit for them. And with many of these observations, you can, like, once you've completed the set, you can submit them to the AL. You'll get a certificate and a pin, and and many of these work towards a progression, which is known as Master Observer. So that's also kind of the capstone on your observing prowess there. All right. So if you go out to the Astronomical League website, I have it right. The actual site is right here at the bottom of the screen here. You can look for observing clubs, and you'll find that, especially if you go there, you can choose to see that by your skill level. So if you're just starting out, they have a novice level there for you to look for, and all the ones that have an X down here, you can actually choose if you're just a beginner. At the more intermediate level, there's a lot more programs, and then you have some that are pretty advanced. So again, I encourage you to go out there. You can copy this website, or you can just go to a Google search and put in just search for Astronomical League observing programs, and you'll be able to come up with this page right here. So it's important, though, once you do select an observing program, and I will talk about that just for a second. So what do? I mean, it's easy. For me, my very first program was the Lunar 1 program. That's the one I chose. And it's pretty easy. You can complete that program in about a month, really just one lunar cycle. So again, it's something that's it's really easy to knock out. There's about 100 observations, but they're literally you're in one session, you could probably pick up like about 30 observations. And but whenever you do select an observing program from the AL, it's really important that you read the side panels. Now, go ahead and read the material that talks about the observing program, but really make sure that you understand some of these side panels, because they'll give you certain cues on what you need. Now, in this example I have here, this is the binocular Messier observing program. So they've set out a set of Messier objects that you can see with binoculars. And so over here, they just have here's a quick view of the requirements. Yeah, you're going to use binoculars. You need to be an AL member. The minimum instrument size is 20 millimeter, which is a really small pair of binoculars, but you should be able to knock it out with something as small as that. The observations have to be manual. So as to my understanding, there aren't any go-to binoculars, but in some cases they do require manual observations. But in this case, and which is the case with the binocular Messier program. And then, like I said, there's 50 observations. So it's pretty easy. I'll tell you, when I actually started this thing, I was sitting in a lawn chair in Roaring River, North Carolina, one night, and I was just kind of looking at the sky between Scorpius and Capricorn, and I got 30 of the observations just in that section of the sky, and I did it in one night. So I mean, literally, you can literally just, with this one, it's so easy to do. And so, and then it took me about maybe another month or so to get the rest of the observations. But it was just one of those perfect nights. The sky was black, it was clear. I was in the mountains, and I just picked them off one after another. But some of the things you do need to do is that when in the observing requirements, you need to know some things. You need to know what the object name and the number is. You need to know what your latitude and longitude are. And these you have to record. Now, you can just use an Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to be fancy about that. But if you want, you can buy a star chart, electronic star chart that has a logging capability, or I'll put a shameless plug in for Phyllis Lang's product. She's her observing program. You can just log data with that. It's really good, and also help you find your object as well, in terms of telling you where to look in the sky, and with respect to is it going to be up? What's the best transit time? Stuff like that. And she uses a lot of the binocular observing and other AL programs in her product. Um, anyway, and then you want to make sure that you give a good description of the object. And that's where we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the programs require sketching, as Ian will attest to. Ian is a master sketcher. I'm constantly impressed with your sketches, Ian. But these are really easy to get. I'm not. I'm one of these guys that kind of draws like this, you know. So I'm not an artist. But so for me, then they're not expecting you to be an artist. So if you do see something that has sketched the object, don't be put off by that. That's not scary. You just want to, like literally, for me, double stars in some cases kind of got down to 2 dots on a page, in some of the cases. So it's they're not expecting artistry. They're just expecting maybe just an accurate depiction of what you're doing. They want you to be able to record your seeing in transparency, the size of the instrument you're using, what your power and magnification are. And so these are kind of the requirements of the program. And then, other things they want to know when you go to submit your data to the AL. They want to see what the observer's name is. They want to know what your mailing address is, what your club affiliation is, your phone number, all this information, so they can know how to get your award to you, or if they need to contact you with a question or whatever, they need to know that information. All right. So this is the again, and when you're planning your observing program and planning your observational session, you want to make sure that you understand what your objects are, and which ones you've got to get. This is the actual Messier. This is actually the binocular Messier program. So they'll give you an idea. They want you to you can get 42 objects that are easy, and then only 8 that are in the tougher or challenging section. So this is a really easy program to do. And then once you're done, you submit your data, and they'll give you an award. All right. So it should be obvious to us all now, but I got to tell you, I've been the world's worst at this at times. I haven't, I've just say, I want to get out and I want to go observe, and I haven't checked the weather, and so it's really important to do that weather checking. So one of the ones that I really love, the National Weather Service, they do a great job. But whatever weather program you use, you want to do something that will actually give you an accurate forecast of what the sky is going to look like. In this case, you can see this is an older panel here, but on January 6th, 2020, I mean, the sky cover was 0%, and there was 0% precipitation. Now, relative humidity was a little high, but in terms of precip and in terms of sky clarity, we had a really, really good uh, forecast. And then, of course, later on in the, on and that would have been Sunday evening through Monday morning, but later on in the evening, that was going to fall apart very quickly into by 11 p.m. It was probably going to be getting pretty cloudy. So you could really could have gone, like I said, Sunday evening through probably about 11 p.m. on Monday night, and you would have had a decent observing session. Kind of another thing I kind of look at on the day of is this water vapor loop. And you can kind of, this is one from NOAA. And in this particular loop, you can see the brown area is where all the dry area is, and the blue area is where the moisture is. But it's always good. It's good to run the loop, because if you run the loop, then you get a chance to kind of see what the if you want, for lack of a better term, what the inertia of any weather system is that you're looking at. Now, I'm just going to pull this in right here. This is tonight's forecast. I just took a look at it and everything. We've got some really nice dry air over us right now, so that's great. Of course, we've got a major moon, but this is great. This is and so this is the still. But if we wanted to look at the actual water vapor loop, and this is the 2024 frame one, I'll just click that right there, and you can see animation. And you can kind of see how this is actually kind of beginning to collapse in on us. But we've also got this low, this boundary from this low that's also going to move up in on us. And we'll just go ahead and continue it. And so, like, again, for tonight, things are looking good. And that's the other thing about the water vapor loop. It's really only good for about 12 hours or so. So it's just really like kind of like giving you an idea what's going to happen if you were to go out. Tonight would be a good night, except that we've got a lot of moon. And and I don't want you to be put off by the moon. I know for a while we've always been very indignant when the moon's out. It washes everything out. But I got to tell you, I was out with a group on Friday night. We had it was just past first quarter, and we were still able to get some great views of like M22, some of the brighter Messier objects. I would easily found M81, M82. Were very easy objects to get, even with a 62% moon. So, don't be put off when there is moon. Just be cognizant that it's there, that the brighter the moon gets, the less you're going to be able to see of the structure of the object. And the other thing too, I've noticed is that, if you're really looking for that fine granular detail, you're not going to get it when the moon's, 62%. Objects, which we all call them faint and fuzzies, they're going to be even fainter and even fuzzier. But just know that that you can find, especially the brighter objects, when you have moon out. So don't let that stop you from going out. I know I have done that in the past myself, and really I've given up some good opportunities when the weather's been good, just because the moon is either first quarter or beyond. Don't let that stop you. All right, let's go to the next slide here. This is Astrospheric. This is actually my favorite go-to weather app. This is this is I have the one from tonight because we're actually planning a project or a public observing coming up, and this is what it's looking like this weekend. I talked with the organizers, and they decided they wanted to go on this night, on Saturday night. So it's not going to be as good, I think, as Friday night, but Friday night has a higher chance of rain. So we're gonna go for the Saturday and hope things turn out really well. But the Astrospheric is great because you can get a good 10-day forecast out of it. And let me just show you, and then it's down here as well. So you can see more or less what the sky is going to look like. So definitely, again, this is, it's up to you which weather program you use. Just you need to find one that you're confident in, and just stick with it. And but don't be, don't stay too confident. These things are changing all the time, and new ones are coming out. And if there's another one that's even more accurate, don't be afraid to hop over to it and use it. All right. Right. Hey, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to pop in. I'll be more than happy to, to take questions while we're talking. So, just again, when you're really thinking about observing, do create an observing plan. Again, if you take one of the plans from the AL, it's already been created for you. You might have to transfer it over into your particular observing program. I use SkyMap Pro as my observing program, and so I usually have to take these and actually enter them into that. And I can show you what that looks like in just a minute. Selecting the correct observing tool. Again, I use SkyMap Pro. I find it to be very, very accurate. So that's what I use as my tool. It helps. It drives my scope, and it drives my and then it also keeps my logs, all my data logs and everything. And I like that. Some other aids. I mean, I'll be straight with you. I'll take. I like the little star map from SkyPub, the Pocket Sky Atlas. I like to take that with me, just as a second reference, even though I've got an electronic sky map. So I do take those with me. Again, I try to have multiple observing programs, so I'm not just waiting on one to complete and say, oh well, I can't look at any Herschel objects because all the spring objects have gone away now. Try to do something like, have a binocular Messier program going while you're also doing maybe a Caldwell program or something like that. And it's better to have multiple ones going than just one, and then you feel like, oh well, I can't do anything tonight because I don't have enough objects up. Don't let that stop you from observing. That's really the point why we get out. We get out and observe because, we really enjoy this. We have a passion for the night sky. Don't let, because you can't actually complete an observing program, don't let that stop you from going out. We've already talked about the moon, and always kind of pay attention to what percent moon you're working with. Just know that you may not be able to see some really detailed structure, let's say in a galaxy like M81, but you can still see it. What are your site restrictions? There may be some site restrictions. Maybe there's a gate that's locked and you need to get someone who can open the gate for you or whatever. Just kind of be cognizant of that. We have some other sites that we now we just have to call the owner of the site and they'll open it up for us. So just know what those restrictions are. Again, we've talked about sky conditions. If you need any particular kinds of filters, like for instance, if you're trying to see the Veil Nebula, it's going to be really difficult to see visually. But if you have like an O3 or an O2 filter, you're going to be able to see much more with that. So kind of be cognizant of that. I will say, a lot of people get red, blue, and green filters with their usually with a first eyepiece kit or whatever. I really find those they're not useful until the planets come around, and then usually it's either Jupiter or Mars that they're really good about highlighting certain surface features. So but those filters by and large really aren't, for the most part, are not useful for the observing that I do. They might be for you, but just for me, they're not very, very useful. But another filter, like say an O2, an O3 filter, maybe a lunar filter, a really good lunar filter, maybe one that's got like a double ring that you can twist and everything, is really good to use. So, and then your logging method. What kind of logging method are you going to do? Are you going to do manual notes? Now, we have a club member, and all his notes are manual. He writes them down. He has a little form that he's created in Word, but he manually writes all his stuff in. And so when he submits the his notes for the AL. And by the way, I'm the club Alcor. The Alcor is the Astronomical League coordinator. I'm the guy that actually reviews the data for the club and reviews that before I pass it on to the AL. And so anyway, he gives me manual notes. I actually have to read through manual notes, and he's actually a doctor. So he writes like a doctor. So it's really sometimes it's really difficult to read his stuff. So, but anyway, they're definitely acceptable. You can use Excel. Almost everybody has access to Excel or an Excel like program. You can use something like there's a lot of freeware that programs that will mimic like Open Office will mimic Word, Excel, and all that. You can use those. That's perfectly fine. Or you can use a logging application. And what's really cool about logging applications is that, like for instance, if I make an observation about M1, let's say I'm doing that for, you know, I don't know, for some observing program, and then I flip over to the Messier program, I can actually reference that older observation and pull that in. So, and they also, since you have that data kind of like sitting in a database, it's a lot easier to use a tool to create a report. So, for submitting to the AL. So just think about that. It's again, it's easier if you use it. And there are some logging applications out there that are freeware. And so I definitely encourage you to do that. You don't have to go out and buy one. Just, right.
Is there a logging application you would recommend?
Yeah, I think Phyllis Lang has developed a great logging application. For whatever reason, the name escapes me. Ian, do you recall what the name of it was? Phyllis's.
Are you talking about Deep Sky Planner?
Yeah, Deep Sky Planner. That's exactly it. That's a great one. It's developed actually here in the Cary area by Phyllis Lang. I like it. But the one I use actually is it's actually included in my SkyMap routine. This is SkyMap Pro 12. It comes with a logging application, and I can just go into planning. Here's my target list. I can create or edit the list. This is the one from the Messier catalog here. And here you can see all my observations that I've made in that Messier catalog. So these are that's really great for doing that. And when you double click this, what's great is then you can like kind of bring up the actual observation. This is basic information about the object, but I can also, let me just unclick here and I'll just kind of right click on it. Of course, it won't do that. I'll just come down here to log. I don't know what happened to the log data. Let me just. Well, there's also, if you want to like query, you can do a search, query your log data. Right here, look at your observing log. And let me just do a search. It'd be easier to do that. I'm sorry. And then I can search for that. And here are all the instances where I observed M1. It's really great for pulling that out, and then you can get further information. If I double click that, these are my actual observations of M1. So, and then you can kind of go from one to the next. And then if I wanted to, I could create a report, kind of a tab. I'll take the tab of the report and then say, let's see here. Well, let's see. I'll just take say like maybe the site comments. observation time, observer's name, seeing conditions, and I can run a report off that. And this is just from that data and everything, you can see what I picked up, what the comments I made, and then about it. So I would say, again, I'm not sure, Ian, if you played with the more recent versions of Stellarium. I know there was some talk about adding a logging feature to Stellarium, plus the ability to create target lists.
Yeah, so that's actually, it's interesting. Rask, I saw something on that's the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada actually has a whole series of observing lists now that you can load in Stellarium.
Oh, okay.
I do use Stellarium in my classes, so we do have, yeah. So apparently, it does have various lists. I don't know whether the AL lists are there or not, but
yeah. So I'm sure you could probably, if Rask could create them, I'm sure you could probably just take one of those example files and turn that into a target list from AL.
yeah, I highly recommend Googling for something before you do the work yourself, because a lot
Yeah,
of people have. There's a lot of people with a lot of time
yeah,
that
I
love
hear
to do
you.
this stuff.
Exactly. All right. It also helps to let me just go on, and then it also helps to know what you're looking for, what kind of object that you're looking for. Are you looking for, are you doing globular clusters, like you can do just a globular cluster program out of the AL. And so is that what you're looking for? And is the object that you're looking for actually a globular cluster? Are you trying to look at M44 and trying to divine a globular out of that? And it's like, well, there's no way you're going to be able to do that because open cluster. So kind of know something about the object that you're trying to look at. It'll help you in your own mind's eye, begin to look for that object. So it's important to kind of know that. If you saw that observing log that I had, and I'll just kind of bring it up one more time here, bring that target list up. One of the nice things about the target list is that it already knows what the object is. So you can kind of, you can in your own, again, on your own mind, begin to prepare yourself. But that's what I'm looking for. That's what I should be seeing, you know. And then just kind of know, and know that they're going to vary. It's like, for instance, here's M80. M80 is bright. It's beautiful. It's an easy find. But M54, on the other hand, not so easy. It's really tight. It's not as spread out as M80 is. So it's good to kind of know that. One of the cool things, again, about this program that I'm using is that, as we saw before, if I wanted to say look at M80, I could also get an idea of what it looks like by just getting some information on it. And then in this case, the picture is not as spectacular as I have on the screen there. So this is what the data that my program comes up with. But it's just kind of an idea. It gives you an idea of what to look for. And the other thing too is that is that when you go to look for these objects, is taking note of the star field that's around them. I want to talk about that in just a second, but just I want to continue through the object types. You want to make sure, is it a globular cluster? Is it an open cluster? Is it a planetary nebula? Is it a supernova remnant like M1 or the Veil, which is NGC 6960? You just want to make sure that what it is you're looking at. In the case of the planetary nebulas, I've got the Dumbbell Nebula M27 and I've got the Ring Nebula M57, and these are two different views of a planetary nebula. So the Ring Nebula, we're looking right down the throat of the ring, so we're actually looking at it face on. But the M27 is actually a planetary nebula that we're looking at from the side. So this is what it looks like from the side. So just kind of know that that's what again, it helps to know what you're looking for and why it looks like it does. Let's go to the next slide. Also too, dark nebula, like in this case, like in the case of the Horsehead and the Coal Sack, you're going to be looking at a black sky, and you're looking for black against black most of the time. The Coalsack's a little differently, but you've got this big star field here, and it's still all this, all this blackness. I'll be straight with you. It's been hard for me to find this actually in my 10-inch, but yeah, at Staunton River, it's a lot easier to see when you're at a place that has really good skies. So just know that that's what you're looking for. And again, this is a nice photograph, but when you actually go to see this, look through the scope, it's not going to look like that, and it's going to be very, very faint. So really important to keep that in mind. We'll talk about averted vision and how to ferret out some of these faint objects on the next on an upcoming slide. But just I want you to make sure that these are going to be faint, and sometimes they're very difficult to discern. Diffuse nebula, can turn into reflection nebula or emission nebula. So this is just the diffuse is really more of a parent name for specific types of nebula. In this case, this is the Oyster Nebula. It's a planetary nebula, a lot like M57. Just the whole idea with it being diffuse, though, is it doesn't have really well-defined. It's more the edges may be more amorphous. So M42 is a kind of diffuse nebula in that it doesn't have any specific shape, but it's also a reflection nebula. It's also known as a bright nebula. And so these names can be interchanged. The M57, besides being a planetary nebula, is also an emission nebula, which means that the kind of the solar wind that's hitting the sides of this ever expanding debris cloud that came off of when this star went nova is actually heating it up to the point where it's actually fluorescing. And so that's how we're actually able to see it. And then I had here M1. Everyone sees this picture of M1. First of all, I could never understand why this looks like a crab. It doesn't remind me of a crab, but when you go to look at this, it's really fuzzy. It's faint. So don't be expecting to see this. That's the other thing, is that a lot of these pictures are captured over time, and so you get the colors and stuff. But in reality, they're pretty faint when it comes to actually looking at them in a scope. Let's go to that. And then of course Ian is the consummate master on galaxies and on their shapes and everything. But just kind of know that how galaxies kind of the morphology of how they look. You have various numbers of elliptical galaxies. Those can turn into lenticular galaxies, and then from down the lenticular chain, we can get barred spiral galaxies, or just spiral galaxies. Some galaxies only have spirals but no bars. Our particular galaxy is a barred spiral galaxy. And then you get some with some intermediate spirals in them. Some that are not really holding together very well. You can get some that are down the scale that turn to be irregular. So again, kind of knowing what you're looking for is important. Also, this will help you when you go to actually log an observation. Right. And I want to talk a little bit about perceiving a faint object. So, and again, some of you may be old-hat at this, some of you may be new, but we use averted vision. And so down here in the kind of the middle paragraph here, I kind of explain it. The very center of your eye, the fovea, primarily contains cone cells, which will help you perceive bright light and color, but they really don't help you with sensitivity or at night. And so your rods, which are out on the outer parts of your eye, are actually what help you perceive, darks, grays, gray tones, black and white. And so sometimes when you're looking at an object directly on, and you're only getting black and white or gray tones coming towards you, you're not going to see that object. So it's really good sometimes if you will just place the object not in the center of your field of view, but off center, so that the object's maybe sitting here, say like maybe right at 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So more towards the edge of your eyepiece. It's also important why you should get good eyepieces, because you don't want a lot of goop happening around the edges of the eyepiece. You want an eyepiece that's really good from edge to edge. So no vignetting or anything like that. So, or no Coke bottle effect. You just definitely want to make sure. But again, if you put the object towards the side, then that will help you utilize your rods in your eyes much more effectively, and so you'll be able to see the object better. So that's why, using the side of your eye to look at an object. Sometimes thumping the telescope, especially if you have a Meade LX200 like mine, it's really easy to tap the thing and just have it wobble and everything. But if you thump the side of the telescope, sometimes that will shake the image a little bit. That will give you enough variability that your eye will pick it up. And so that's a technique for when you're using averted vision. You know, when you're looking in the eyepiece, sometimes it's really good just to close your eyes for about 5 seconds. And that actually gives your brain enough time to kind of wipe out that last after image that you saw. And then when you open it up, your brain has to completely refresh the image. And so when it does that, you may be able to perceive the object much better. In the old days, when our observing site, which we observe at is known as Big Woods, was a dark sky site, I did some of our long-term club members used to use an eye patch or a shroud actually over the scope. However, now Big Woods is pretty bright, and you don't really get that much advantage by using a shroud or an eye patch. But those are definitely some things that you can use to improve your ability to see something. The other thing too, and I'll just point it out, is that when you're doing this, let's say you use a sky mapping program to pull you in onto an object. Your scope's aligned well and things are going really well, but for whatever reason, you just can't see the object. And that's really possible. I mean, I've been there many times where, I've been looking at I know that there's something there. There's something going off in my mind saying, I know there's something there, but I just can't perceive it, And again, that's where averted vision helps. But it's also really important that you make sure that you're actually in the right area of the sky. Your scope may go to, it may put you right in that area, but it's always really good to check your star pattern and make sure that the patterns of stars that are around that object are what you can perceive. And you can see there's a lot of stars here looking at this little object M28. It's a lot smaller than M22. M22, you can just start at the top of the teapot and kind of just slew over and you can see it easily. But M28 is not so much. And so you want to try to look in there and make sure that you're kind of in that same star pattern, and that, and then kind of work on your averted vision to make sure that you can see the object. At the end of the day, if you can't see it, it's perfectly legal and good to just write in your log, I tried to observe this thing and I couldn't see it. I'll try again later. And I've got several of those entries in my logs, and I had to go back at other times to try and find it, and could find it. But it's one of those things that just takes practice. Here's an example of one of my logs. This is M5. It's a globular cluster. One of the nice things about using a logging routine is that it'll keep track of your latitude and longitude. So, and once you put your instrument in it, this was a case where I was using 10x50 binoculars. It keeps that information for you and all your details. So all you really have to do then is really maybe kind of record what your weather conditions are, and then maybe say something about it. Let's see. I don't know. Here are the comments. That's about the binocular. Let's see where I put my actual observing details. I think I cut that off at the bottom. We're going to go to see some logging information in just a second. So when it comes to actually recording data and recording your actual log, I got to tell you, when I first started observing, it was really hard. I was kind of like, well, I see the object, it's there, it has stars, and I wasn't really much better than that. But as I began working on these, some of the club members actually helped me out with some things. And here's what you can do to be descriptive in your notes. First of all, does the object have a shape? Is it round, ovular, square, rectangular, triangular? What, or just say roughly shaped like a blob. It's it's perfectly fine to use that language, but try to maybe say something about the shape. you know are there any patterns? So it's, does it form an asterism of some sort? Does it look like a bird, or like in the case of the Beehive Nebula, a beehive? Does it remind you of a face? Just, if you're looking for like something like Bernard Star is really cool because there's a V of stars that actually point to Bernard Star, and sometimes it's above or it's below, depending on the year that you're looking at the star. But there's just this nice chevron that's pointing, in the general direction where Bernard Star is. So um, you might mention that. Do you see colors? Now, when I was a younger man and I could look at Orion, I could see actually colors like some reds and some greens and blues. But I'm now much older, and I can only see grays and blues in the Orion Nebula. So those things do change with age, and they all can also change with after cataract surgery. So it's just some of these colors may be hard to perceive. Now, stars do have specific colors. So Phyllis Lang, I'm going to mention Phyllis again, has actually started working on it. She's actually written an article about observing green stars or blue stars. So there are stars that are specifically blue and green. And so she's made a list of some of the more interesting green stars in the night sky. And as you know, most stars are not green. So she's made a list up of those. But the recording what you see, whether they're red or green or yellow or blue or orange, you know, helps with what your description in your observation. Is it uniform? Is it evenly illuminated, or does it kind of trail off? Does it seem to be bright in the middle, or is it diffuse towards the ends, or is it uniformly bright throughout? Things like that. Is there anything else in the background? Again, other objects, other stars. Like if you're looking at the Horsehead Nebula, there's a really bright star right there. That's really, what is it? I think it's Sigma or Orionis. That's right there. That's just kind of annoying, and that's also, you kind of want to move that out of your field of view if you're looking for that Horsehead. But it could be in your field of view, and you might note that. The other thing too is remember that you could make a discovery. So being detailed is important when logging data. When you're especially making a detailed log entry into your observing program. There could be something there like a comet or something that no one has seen yet. And so if you see something that doesn't match your star map, maybe consult some of the other astronomers around you. But it could be something that's new. We, of course, McNeil's Nebula is one of the ones that a number of years ago that we were all abuzz about, because this guy who was basically a cable guy, who was really good at looking at the night sky, actually discovered a nebula that had not been previously seen before. So McNeil's Nebula, you can always check that out. But you can and always do remember that there is an opportunity to make discovery, and so always be mindful of that. All right, so here's a couple of my descriptions. Again, these aren't great, but I mean, like M5, this globular cluster M5. I just said in binoculars, this globular cluster is much brighter and more tightly formed than the elusive and more diffuse M4. So I'm comparing it to a prior observation that I had made. But I do go on to say it's got like a bright central core. It's not, but not as tightly formed as M92. So I'm using other references to say, to describe my object. And then here's a bright star around 7 o'clock in the eyepiece, 5 Serpentitis. So that's just kind of an example of how you can use references to other objects. You can use, you want to talk about how bright it is, and maybe again point out an object that's in the area. Here's one, and again, don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I had difficulty spotting this." I said, NGC 246 is tricky to spot. It's a planetary nebula. This is one where I had to definitely use averted vision. In this case, there's a lot of color in it, and so if you look directly at it, it will wink out. So you can only kind of look at it with the side of your eye. So you're looking forward, but you've got it sitting over here at 3 o'clock in your view. You can only see it out of this side, out of the sides of your eye. You cannot look at it directly, or it'll just wink out. So that's that. Don't be afraid to state that and describe how you're able to see it. In this case, I was a little cavalier with this one, but still valid as an observation. I said, "Wow, I got a twofer." So I was able to get actually 2 NGC objects in the field of view in the eyepiece. These are 2 galaxies, or 2 elliptical galaxies, NGC 584 and NGC 596. And I basically just made one observation for the both of them, and they're very similar, and they both had, you could see the cores really easy, but they kind of were very diffuse on the outer edges. And then this was an open cluster in NGC 663. I just talked about it being bright and large and all that. Now, I want to show this very last sentence. This gives a 3D-like appearance to the entire structure. So I'll tell you that if you actually go to do the Herschel objects, there's a lot of open clusters in the Herschel program. There's 400 objects, as Ian will tell you. Now, when I was looking at these, I was just kind of going through these open clusters, and I was going, what an egotist. 3 stars get together, and Herschel calls it an open cluster. Well, I really wasn't paying enough attention. If you really kind of look at these and spend time observing these open clusters, you'll soon begin to see that there are some very bright stars in the open clusters, and that's kind of what you kind of focus on. But really behind them, there's some diffuse stars. So they're more, I should say, more dim. They're dimmer stars, and you kind of get this 3D effect. It looks like, because you've got a foreground that's very bright and a background that's very faint. And there's a lot of those a lot of those open clusters in the Herschel 400s that are like that. So really don't just look at a open cluster and say, "Oh, it's 3 stars. That's nothing for me to look at." Take time, look at it. Don't just, hit the object and go off into the next one. Take some time at the eyepiece. Again, close your eye, open it up, and really try to peer at the object. And you'll begin to see that there's a lot more depth to these objects rather than just kind of hitting them, one after the other. That's one of the weaknesses of having an observing list. You have a tendency to kind of knock them off because you want to get through and finish the program and get your award. But it really is more rewarding if you will take a few more minutes just to try to perceive what that object looks like. And you'll really be rewarded with some really interesting views. All right, so when it comes time to submit you've finished your program out, you're gonna submit it to the AL. You want to get your award and everything. You should have a club member who is designated the ALCOR. This is the person who is the Astronomical League coordinator, and they're the ones that should review the data for completeness, clean up any, and to do that before you submit to your Alcor, do help them out. Make sure you review your observations for completeness to make sure that you've got all the correct submissions and everything, that you've got all the correct objects. Clean up your spelling errors. And let me just tell you, I got a lot of observations now that I've made over the years. I still find spelling errors in them because this particular sky map program that I use doesn't have a spell checker in it and probably never will. So it's always important, just copy your stuff, say like into a Word document, and just, let Word do the spell checking for you. But, do try to find that. Make sure that you've also reviewed the content and make sure you've met all the requirements. Okay. So that's very important. And the Alcor's responsibility is kind of to review your submission with respect to the requirements and send them off to the AL. And that's what they do. So let me just say this, that in some cases, the AL will allow the Alcor just to review it there and then submit the submission, just say, I've reviewed this. And then based on the Alcor standing as Alcor, they can actually tell the AL to provide the award. But in some cases, the chair of the observing program will require you to send the data in. So it varies from program to program. Make sure though that you do, whoever is your Alcor in your club, make their job easy by really kind of going in here and making sure that you've made all the requirements, that you cleaned up your notes and stuff. And then once the AL receives a submission, the program chair will review the data. They'll approve or reject with comments. They'll log the award. You can actually go to the AL page and look at award submissions, and then they'll send out a pin and a certificate, and then your name will actually be published in the Reflector magazine once you're done with that. And we before pre-pandemic, I will say we had a pretty active AL program. During the pandemic, everyone's been kind of hunkered down and slowly working on their programs, but we do have people that are working on programs right now, including myself. But here we have 4 club members that have actually completed different programs. The 3 here to the right have completed. There was a NASA 50th anniversary observing challenge where you had to go out and observe all the lunar landing sites on the moon and make some detailed observations about that. And so they got this. Not all of the programs come with a pin, but they do all come with a certificate. And in this case, the lunar challenge was not with pin. But in the case here, we have Mike Keefe standing here, our current one of our current co-chairs, standing here on the left. He's actually just completed his binocular Messier program and gotten the award plus the actual pin. So, and that's pretty much, I would say, and the reason why I kind of lean on the Astronomical League again is that they have a lot of observing programs. Pretty much anything you're interested in the night sky, they've got an observing program for. And I will tell you, they made me a better astronomer just by choosing one of these programs and actually working through it. And I found that, I was a lot more knowledgeable about particular aspects of the night sky. And so, again, I really, I'm big on it. I think and I'm glad your club has actually joined the AL. I think it's a really good direction to take. And I know Ian's actually completed several of the programs himself. And so again, I'll let Ian chime in here, but I do think that they actually made me a better astronomer just by working through them. All right, that's pretty much the program. If there are any questions, you guys have any comments or anything like that, I'd be happy to take them now.
So have you ever got on the wrong object?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
And it takes courage to say, I was wrong. Don't be afraid to do that.
Well, yeah, one of my first observations, I went back to my notes, and yes, the following day after I looked closer at what I observed, yeah, I was on the wrong object. So
yeah. I gotta tell you that, the thing is, especially with the I have an SAT, so left and right are swapped. And so if you're looking, the problem is when you're looking at your star map, you're trying to look over here on the right, and you just can't find that object. Sometimes you can to convince yourself, yes, I saw the object, when no, you didn't. And so I'm like you, I had to kind of go back and honestly, yeah, this is part of this is to be honest with yourself. Say, yeah, I didn't see it, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to correct that. Good one, Gerald. Anybody else? Well,
So I have to agree with Doug.
Yeah.
I'll throw in the list here at the end. I really like the AL and the observing programs. I found them extremely useful. When you first start doing astronomy, it's really easy. I mean, you find there's some good resources. Or hey, here's some things to look at, and people look at the Orion Nebula, and you maybe even get something like Turn Left at Orion, the book, or something like that. Then you kind of get to this point relatively quickly where it's like you go out on a good night and you're like, well, what do I look at? And you may think of, and you may say, well, try to think of something, and you try to think of something to look at and think of something else to look at. And you only end up looking at like, maybe one or two or three things on a good night. And you're like, well, I'm not really sure what I should look at. And I found that doing the AL programs was great, because what I would do is I would actually print off the lists, and I would put them by like right ascension order, right? So that, and I'd carry multiple lists with me, and depending on what type of night it is, and you have a whole bunch of objects you can observe. You can just say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start looking at these objects. And it's not only dark sky. I think Doug alluded to that. I mean, you've got like the Lunar Club that I did from my front driveway in Raleigh, which has a lot more light pollution than where I live now. Yeah, anywhere in the Myrtle Beach area, you can do the Lunar Club. It's dead easy. And the same with the Planetary Club, and which, by the way, is one of the better clubs. The Planetary Club, it's actually a great. You pick a certain number of projects out of a list, and actually you learn a lot through doing all of them. And then there's things like the Double Star Club that, again, mostly can be done from your driveway. So it's kind of nice to have those lists, as well as some of the deep sky lists. When you get somewhere dark, you can look at the deep sky stuff. But you may say, what's a really good night? What am I going to go look at? Well, here I can start looking at some of these colorful double stars or something. So I found it very, very handy, because it kind of gives you a built-in list. And once you kind of just process the list initially, then you've always sort of got like a built-in observing list. So if you get a good night and you don't have much time for plan, you've already got a list of things you can pick from. So, and plus you learn a lot. So.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask binoculars. You mentioned a couple of the AL programs just require binoculars.
Yes.
I don't have I got the little tiny ones, right, for bird watching or something, but like for hiking or something like that. So what kind of binoculars would you recommend for these types of observations?
Yeah, he actually says in the program, and I've actually conversed with the chair a little bit. They're a little bit laxer on the requirements than what you actually see on the program, but he actually wrote the program to be doable by a pair of 7x35 binoculars. So they're literally the birding binoculars that they're probably most likely what you have. Yeah. So you don't have to go out and buy a massive pair of binoculars. I did mine with 10x50s, totally.
Okay.
And literally these, I have them right here. My trusty Bushnell 10x, and this, let me just say this, the Bushnell binoculars are not considered a great pair of binoculars by most astronomers, but I like them. I really I think they've been great binoculars, and I continue to use them. But yeah, he's very flexible with that program, and so you really only need, like I said, 7x35s, and you can do 50 objects. Most of these are bright most of those in the binocular program are bright Messier objects. And literally, this is no joke. I literally sat in a lawn chair, just going up Sagittarius, flipping over to, towards, I'm sorry, up Scorpio, up Sagittarius, over to Capricorn, and all in between. And that area of the night sky is known as the haystack. So I just went up the haystack and down one side of the haystack and down the other. And it was, it was incredible. I picked up 30 just sitting in a lawn chair. And so that one's a really easy one to do. Especially now we're in the season. We're in globular season. A lot of these are globular clusters. Again, they're really easy to pick out. The other thing, like Ian was saying about strengthening you in terms of helping you understand, be a better astronomer. What's really good is that as you guys grow as a club, that creates a group of people who are strong with respect to finding objects in the night sky. And what the most things that we found is that the thing that really has a tendency to hook people into astronomy and give them really the bug for it is being able to have near immediate success. So if you find a new club member or maybe a visitor who's struggling, finding say like a globular cluster or something you've already experienced with one of these, AL programs, you're going to be, really essential in helping that person be successful in finding that object. And so you really want to not only, address these programs for your own personal fulfillment, but you think of future club members that are coming who will actually look to your example to help find those objects and give them success. And so, basically you're teaching people who will teach people who will teach people who will teach people down the line. So it is something that will help you build a strong club and people who are strong astronomers.
Yeah. So again, I agree, and I think that I honestly think that it's a great program and a great way to learn an awful lot about the sky. It was very, very helpful to me because I would have stalled out very early in the process. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to just do the sky tourist thing, and I have a friend who's a very good observer, and he just never plans anything. He just goes out and just decides what he's going to look at, and he loves it. And if that's the way you want to be, that's terrific. But if you do find yourself kind of saying, okay, or kind of stalling out, it's a great way. There's a tremendous number of clubs for anything you're interested in, whether it's comets, whether it's asteroids, whether it's galaxies, whether it's open clusters, there's so many different there's so many different observing programs that they have. Again, many which can do binoculars. There's a whole master binocular observer one if that's all you have now. They've expanded a lot of things. So if you have a solar telescope, there's solar observing clubs.
Exactly.
And or if you just want to look at sunspots or sunspots. So I do recommend doing it. It like I said, it's really a great way to kind of hone your skills and kind of give you a little bit of direction. So
I will point out, Ian, is that they did make a recent update to these programs to now include an imaging option. So before they were purely visual, and so imagers were kind of left out of that. So if you have, a group of folks in your club that are interested in imaging, they can actually now get credit for these AL programs through imaging. So there is an imaging component there too. So you can also strengthen your imaging group through those through AL as well. All right, guys. Well, that's it for my program and everything. So thanks for being attentive and for all your questions and input.
Well, Doug, thanks so much for presenting us and talking about it. Very timely as well, due to the fact that everyone in our club is now an AL member. So, so we very, very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, we don't really have any additional business. The only other business we have is that we have nominations open for officers. We have met we do have to do an annually. The current set of officers will decide how many officer slots we'll have. So we were staying with the minimum of 3, which is required by South Carolina state corporation laws. So we felt that the current set of officers felt that that was still a good number, treasurer, secretary, and executive officer. By our constitution, we need to, one meeting before the election, we need to have a full slate of candidates. We've been taking nominations electronically. We now have a full slate of candidates. So I will just add to anybody that's watching, the nominations will be open up to the elections in the next month's meeting. So if anybody wants to run, they're more than welcome to run. So we will have a vote next month. We'll also open up something electronically so people can vote. So that's just one of the things that we have to do every year. So just for edification, for those of you that aren't following on the email server, so the officers will be the same. The nominations are the same as they were this year, with Gerald Drake as secretary, John DeFreitas as treasurer. Both of them have done an excellent job in those positions. And then myself as chair as well. But again, if anybody feels strongly about running, please feel free to, you can nominate yourself if you want. So beyond that, I don't think we have any other business that I didn't cover earlier. Again, I'll let everybody know as things start shaping up for the fall meetings, but again, they will be available virtually for everybody, as well as, when I say virtually, I mean live. You will to be able to attend live, but virtually, as well as face-to-face. Working with the administration at CCU on that now that we open back up and we have sorting out all our rules, so that barring anything crazy, we'll start doing that. So I look forward to seeing everybody. We didn't have our observing session in June because of the weather. Obviously the weather was pretty rainy and lots of storms, at least at my house. And I'm still trying to work with Hampton Plantation on getting the details of our next observing session in July. Trying to work with the management there. So I will send an email out and let everybody know about that. Okay, so I'm actually going to let me stop the live stream, and thank you for everyone who's watching on the live stream. And